And we're back, The Bear, Season 2, Episode 1. We open up to this somber scene of Marcus taking care of an older woman, possibly his mother or his grandmother, wiping down her hands with a warm cloth, making sure that everything is perfect, showing the kindness in his heart, showing the soft person that he is. Then he leaves to go outside to a incredibly cold Chicago day where he has to scrape ice off his window. I am very thankful to live in California for that exact reason. I've never had to scrape ice off a windshield ever in my life. Marcus being the pastry person within the restaurant, the baker, his day starts hours before everyone else. He's the first one in. Any restaurant that has a baker in-house, that baker starts between 4 and 5 a.m. for a couple reasons. One, bakers are weird and they need their space. Number two, making breads and baking is a very precise science. You can't have a chef come in, opening up every single one of your ovens, changing the heat, raising the humidity, changing the entire environment that you're working in. You need your own space. We get a beautiful pan across Chicago, and then it zooms in on the sign of the beef being taken down because they're revamping. It pulls back to show Carmy and Sydney standing and watching it happen. And there's this moment for both of them that you could see in their eyes. There's trepidation. There's a moment of, are we doing the right thing? Should we be doing this? There's hesitation. When you revamp a restaurant like that, you could close immediately or not even open with how much it costs to redo a restaurant. I love the opening scene of showing the entire beef and how it's kind of being taken apart, taking down all of the celebrity pictures that are signed from people who have eaten there over the years. Pans into Natalie, who she has one of the most important jobs right now. She is the bookkeeper. She's the one who's going through the finances and looking at what it's actually going to cost to reopen, which I don't think people fully understand. Even people who are in the industry don't fully understand sometimes what it costs to redo something as simple as the floor or redoing your walls. Even painting costs obscene amounts of money. Painting over the dishwashers is another very important unit to a kitchen. They are pulling every single piece of equipment they have because if they're going to revamp and move into fine dining like they want to, you have to make sure that you have everything in working order. And if you have pots and pans that are all trash, you can't really move up to that next step. Then we have another slightly somber moment of Ibrahim looking around at the changes. And you can tell that there's a sadness there. He doesn't want things to change. He likes the way things are. And he's grabbing his old timer that he probably used every single day of his life for the past decade at the beef. Change can be very hard for older chefs. You're taking away all they know. And that's difficult. It is. It's very hard. It also feels like they no longer have a place. Now enters Carmy and Fack and Tina, and Fack is telling him that it's a gut. It's a full remodel. And Carmy's like, no, it's just a facelift. And Fack's response is, it's a facelift and a full gut. You can't just do a facelift on something like the beef. It's been there for decades. So you don't even know it's behind those old plaster walls. There's a reason a lot of modern restaurants have switched to tile and hardwood and moved away from like the plaster walls. Plaster just absorbs all of the grease, the smoke, the grime. It's disgusting. So when you go into, say, paint, you realize when you start sanding things down that there's layers, years worth of grime in there, and you usually have to gut it. And they start talking about budget. If you're gonna open a restaurant, here's the budget you start with, and you're gonna end up here, just so you're aware. You will never meet your budget, ever. Something is gonna go wrong. The city is gonna screw you. Plumbing is gonna break. It never goes as planned. You could write an entire thesis on opening a restaurant is just an experiment in Murphy's Law. Everything that can happen will happen. They start listing off all the things that are wrong and right with the beef. The right things are minimal, if any of them exist at all. The working equipment is almost non-existent. Their fryer is trashed. The oven is destroyed. They have a mixer that doesn't work. Stoves kind of work. It's definitely a situation of they have to remodel everything, especially the kitchen, the heart of the restaurant. A new stove is going to run you 20 to 30,000 depending on the size you need. A brand new oven, that's another 15 to 20. A brand new fryer, that's another 10. Adds up very quickly. Then you have HVAC, air conditioning, heating, insulation, walls, flooring, linen, silver, since they're going to fine dining, brand new silverware, plates. Plates cost 10 bucks each. And last but not least, they're trying to hold on to their staff, which means they need to pay the entire staff while no money is coming in. Richie, in this whole time, has been nowhere to be seen because he's downstairs doing God knows what. While Carmy goes to look for his cousin, Nat says, "Oh, we need a project manager." And Sydney just turns and goes, "Good, you're hired." And there's a little back and forth, but Natalie knows they need one. She knows she's capable of doing it, but whether or not she wants to dive into that head first, that's a lot to take in. It does show her value to the team and how they look at her when everyone is united, from dishwasher to chef, that they believe in her abilities to be their project manager for an undertaking like opening a restaurant. So we find Richie downstairs in the basement looking at old family pictures. Carmy's mom, him, the brother, all of them as kids. You can tell that he's really down and out. He's afraid that he's losing everything. And he says, "Do you ever think about purpose?" Carmy's immediate response is, "I don't have time for this." But Carmy sees how broken Richie is. So he immediately just stops and says, "You know what? I got time for this." That's important for everyone. Something as simple as just, "I have time for you," can be life-changing. Saying you have time for someone in that moment could save someone's life. We only have so much time on this earth. We're getting more and more quality character development for Richie. I think more development for him than any other character in the show so far. He's talking about purpose and what is his purpose, and he's telling Carmy about how he's reading a book and how there's that one guy in the group who doesn't have really any discernible talents. So, and eventually everyone in the group just drops him, just leaves him behind because he doesn't really have a purpose within the group. And he's feeling that. And he even says something about like Carmy loving all this stuff. And I can say from experience that loving being a chef and loving opening a restaurant are two completely separate things. Some of the best chefs I've ever met in my life hate opening restaurants. It is taxing, it is stressful. Every day it feels like it's going to be your last day of working on this project because it feels like it's never going to open until it's finally open. And then once you're open, that first day of opening, you're going insane because it feels like everything is about to collapse and go wrong. Even if it's your best day, that feeling doesn't really go away. The most confident chefs in the world are filled with more anxiety than any person you've ever met in your entire life. But Carmy reassures Richie in this moment, "I'm not going to drop this ass. I'm not going to drop you." Like, they're family. They're dysfunctional as fuck, but they're family. Now back up to cleaning and breaking down and seeing what we can salvage for the restaurant. Not much. It's Sydney and Tina looking at all the pans, and Tina says, "If we're going to do this, we need the good for the new Jeff." You don't need the best pans to be a great chef. You don't need the best pans to run a fine dining restaurant, to run any restaurant. But having really high quality things do make things easier. She holds up one of the pans, and you will find these in every restaurant probably in the world. They are cheap aluminum pans. The far side away from you, away from the handle, the opposite side of the handle, was going to be burnt as shit with just carbon all on it. That is incredibly difficult to get off. But Sydney says something that every good chef knows. Barkeeper's friend. That stuff will remove all of the carbon from a pan. Going back to price point, good pans could be anywhere between $50 and $100 per pan. Gets expensive very quickly. Richie and Sydney cross paths. They both kind of stop, kind of make eye contact, kind of don't. There's definitely still a lot of animosity and there's a lot of feelings there that they haven't addressed. And they need to, otherwise it could ruin everything. Now back to the office with Natalie. This highlights the problem with opening up a restaurant on the bureaucratic end. Cities make it impossible for small businesses, especially restaurants, to succeed from the beginning, unless you have very deep pockets. Sydney starts highlighting the fact that you have to apply to the city to get the permits, then you have to apply to the person who gives the permits to send out a inspector rep who will come out and look at the first stage of things. And if that gets approved, then they will send you off to another inspector rep who will come out whenever they feel like it to look at your restaurant. And then that person, and it's just this endless funnel of red tape and bureaucracy. Instead of just having one department handle everything, you have to do everything yourself while still being at the whim of people who know less than you, frankly, and are just waiting to shut you down. Sometimes it feels like these inspectors get off on shutting down small businesses and making it more difficult. It's a power thing. It's annoying. And Sydney falls through a wall. I shouldn't even repeat what Richie calls it, but he refers to a time when Mikey was on some stuff and thought that if he burned the restaurant down, that there would be insurance money. That's pretty common, honestly, in our industry. It's common for restaurants to burn down accidentally. There's a certain point where you just kind of have to give up, and some people take it to the extreme. What else could possibly go wrong with everything at the beef? And they mentioned, I forgot to mention another thing from earlier, is the fact that the gas is off. You can't have the gas on until you have your brand new hood system up and running and it tested by an inspector to show that it works properly, along with the new fire suppression system. It has to be fully tested and ready to go before you even have your gas turned on. As Richie's doing work on the poster of Fenway, which was Mikey's #1 squad, Carmy remembers that they need paint from the crawl space, and he tells Rich, go get the paint in the crawl space, and his response was, I'm in the middle of surgery. Carmy calls back to the earlier scene of purpose, cousin, purpose. And Carmy kind of highlights the fact that they do need a project manager and asks Natalie to think about it. And you can tell that Carmy's like barely holding it together right now. Like he's falling apart. And an alarm goes off, and immediately Carmy just says, "Is that my head?" That's where he's at, like mentally. Good old Uncle Jimmy, played by the amazing Oliver Platt. I think he's had such amazing roles in his career, but I love this one so much because he plays it so well. And Carmy, Sydney, and Nat are giving him the business plan, the idea. Sounds perfect in every way. Meanwhile, the alarm is going off nonstop, which is driving Uncle Jimmy nuts, but everyone else seems to be totally fine with it. Remember back from the last episode of season 1, they found Uncle Jimmy's money that Mikey was canning into tomato sauces. They flat say, it's like, we found your money. And Jimmy says he didn't put it in a fucking bank, did he? And he says, thank God for that, which tells you exactly where that money's coming from. If you remember back from the first season, you see Carmy look in the books and says KBL. Stands for Jimmy's last name, Carmy and Mikey's last name, and you have Uncle Lee Lane, which is funny because Carmy's like, who's that? Who's Lee Lane? It's like, Uncle Lee Lane. It's like, he's not really our uncle. Nat's response is like, well, Richie's not really your cousin. And Richie can hear it over everything go, heard it and I resent it. And now Uncle Jimmy breaks it down as the fact that not only are they not giving him back his original like $350,000, but they're asking for another $500,000 on top of it. But Carmy did mention the fact that like Mikey, before he unalived himself, did have the idea set in stone. He wanted to franchise the beef and open up a fine dining restaurant with his brother, Carmy. Jimmy, being a good businessman, is obviously like, no, I'm not going to fucking sign on to open a restaurant. There's no money in it. Plus, you already owe me money. Then Carmy does something that's not the smartest, which is if they don't pay him back after 18 months, he gets everything. The lot, the restaurant, everything, and Carmy's out. Of course, Jimmy stops and goes, okay, tell me more. He's like, you can get $5 million for the lot, and Jimmy pops back with like 2 at best. This is the funniest part of this whole scene right here, is because Nat and Sydney both go, your math is terrible. You are not good at this. Most chefs are really, really bad when it comes to math, which is really interesting because we deal with math every single day. Jimmy is a smart businessman, but he also appreciates honesty and loyalty. Carmy came through with the truth and said that, I wasn't going to tell you about the money, but we need more and we need a proper partner. And Jimmy would be a good partner because he will do everything he can to make sure the business thrives. Worst case scenario is that the restaurant fails. Jimmy's out $800,000, but then he can sell the lot for $2 million. No matter what, this is a win-win for Jimmy. He has nothing to lose. Jimmy tells them without using so many words that he's in. How long will it take to open? It's like, well, that's a great question. He goes, well, great partners ask great questions. And now they realize that it's go time. They have to open as soon as humanly possible. 18 months to pay back a loan is insane. On top of the fact that they haven't fully started construction, and it could take upwards of 18 months just to do construction on a restaurant. So now it's go time, and we pan in quickly to them around, we're going to call it a war table because that's what it is. They're going to war. They have to figure out exactly how long it's going to take to do everything. Every single minute counts when opening a restaurant. Sydney is in search of her star. She wants to get that Michelin star, which is, noble and kind of dumb, honestly. It's a young chef thing. A star is great, but if you don't retain it, it could ruin everything. Natalie is kind of hitting them with the hard truth of like, if they can open up in 6 months, it'll take 8 months to get in the profit, and then they're almost out of time to pay back their loan. And Carmen's like, 6 months? 6 months to open? It's like, and they're like, oh, that's confidence. Like, no, that's crazy. To open up in 6 months, doing a full rebuild is insane. Not really possible most of the time. You need to be rocking every minute of every single day. You have to do 24-hour shifts in order to get that done. Another big thing is they don't have enough staff. Even with every single person they have at the beef right now, they don't have enough staff to pull off a fine dining menu like at the level that Sydney wants it to be. You need dedicated people who want to learn and want to see that restaurant, that kitchen thrive. They can't be there just for a job. You need strong leadership that people trust and believe in to run a restaurant of that caliber. It hits Sydney right when Tina's leaving. Tina should be the new Sue. Tina's already been there forever. She knows the ins and outs of the beef. She has endured so much shit. Sydney breaks down. It's like, this place is a hellhole and it's like it's falling apart, but would you want to be my new Jeff? Do you want to be the new Jeff? And she doesn't even say yes. She just gives her the biggest hug and is smiling ear to ear, showing how much she wants that. How much that she not just wants it, but needs it. And she deserves it. You can teach someone how to cook, but you can never, ever teach them passion or giving a shit. And Tina already has that in droves. they're coming to the end of essentially their first day of revamping the beef into the bear. There's a moment of uneasiness for all of them of like, oh, did Marcus go home early? It's like, well, there's only so much we can do without permits. And that's kind of true. Carmy says it perfectly, which is everything too chill? They're going home early, which is weird. The sun's still up. That's weird. They're feeling uneasy about it because it seems like more should be done. They get to go home early for the day. That's it. It's the end of the day, right? We get to see the anxiety build within Carmy as he's sitting down at his house. He doesn't know what to do. Looking at his phone, he's looking around the room, he's cleaning off his whiteboard, and then he sits down again, looks at his phone, then looks up and he sees his chef's coat from 11 Masson Park with a CB on it. Then the music starts. And immediately we see a drone shot going over the train in Chicago. Carmy walks up to the beef, opens the door, and is like, hey, hello. Natalie comes out, Sydney comes out, and it's like 6 months is too long. We need to open this right now, like ASAP. They pull out the calendar and they start putting hard dates on when they need to get things done, which is absolutely imperative. You have to do that. You have to have hard dates to get things done. We see them writing things down on the calendar, pulling out color swatches, palettes. You have to choose. It's not just like, oh, we're going to reopen. You have to think about everything. It's so much to think about. It's like it's giving me anxiety thinking about them thinking about it. What color are we going to have the floors? Okay. Are we going to have carpets in the dining room, or are we going to have hardwood floors? Or are we going to have tile? What are we going to have? What color are we going to have the walls? Okay, now what color are we going to have the ceilings? Okay, now what color are the light fixtures? What kind of light fixtures are we going to have? Now tables. Are we going to have contrasting color to the floor, or are we going to have a complementary color to the floor? Plates. Are we doing all white plates? Or are we going to have some slate? Are we going to have some wood? What are we going to have for our plates? Glassware. You get the point. It's 5 million little tiny decisions that all have to go together. It'll make you go insane. And as they're sitting back staring at this giant wall, Sydney says, is this a bad idea? And Carmy and Nat just start shaking their head. Yes. And then they're all shaking like, yeah, this is a horrible idea. It's what they love. Love is insanity. It is the closest thing to insanity, is loving something this much. And that brings us to an end of episode 1. The insanity that is just the planning part of opening up a new restaurant. And we will now get to watch the fate of the bear. If you want to check out all my breakdowns from season 1, click right there. If you want to check out some of the dishes from season 1 that I've remade, click up there. Until next time, I'm Ron the Cook.